I've been given more questions than 1 hour would really permit. So to the first one, the answer is yes. To the second one, it's no. To the third one, it's maybe. And what's wrong with that? But I will answer the questions. I would, at this point, like to read something, if you'll excuse me trying to read something here. I would like to say first, and set the scene for what I'm about to read, there is an old gentleman whose name is Hahn. I don't know where he lives, but he has teachers and students who visit him from far and wide. And when this book comes into its tangible depict, its tangible expression about Hahn, the old teacher, and his friends, you can say you heard part of it before it was published. Also, Hahn has, among his students, is a soldier. And the soldier, of course, knows it all. How I remember. So if you will forgive me, I will answer at least one question by reading this, and it will serve also as a review of what we've covered. The group was seated in the music room with Hahn. He began talking. I would like to tell you of a wonder I found. Everyone enjoys hearing of marvels and wonders, so they leaned forward to listen with attentiveness. Mary, the old man began, you're close to the piano. Will you strike middle C for me, please? Mary rose from the floor, walked to the piano, lifted the cover, and tapped the note briskly. The air was filled with the sounds of middle C until they faded away. Sound the note again, Hahn requested, and Mary responded. Now sound the note again, said Hahn, but this time hold the key down. Mary did, and the note hung in the air. There was no other sound, and everyone listened intently. When the sound had faded away, Hahn said, Mary, hit the C above middle C. She did as she was asked. Now hit it again, said Hahn, and hold it as you did before. This note as the other lingered in the room, fading slowly as Mary held her finger on the key. Now when I tell you a story, the old teacher began, it is as if I had just sounded a note on the piano. If I tell the story well, if I can string the beads harmoniously as a single note, and if the story has any significance to you at all, what did I do? It lingers in the mind's air, like the note that's held down. It remains within memory, even when one turns to think of other things. But when the story is recalled, with it comes the sound of the lingering note, like a feeling, like a mood, like something pensive, perhaps like something joyful. Now, while the note may be forgotten by the conscious mind, the story remains unforgotten in the unconscious. Now, when something else happens in one's experience to induce the mood, pensiveness, anguish, loneliness, fear, or whatever, the story will come back again to consciousness. Or if not the story, some memory connected with the telling of it, or a feeling associated with the telling of it. Perhaps a memory of a friend who was present at the first telling, or the fleeting recall of a butterfly flashing through the mind's eye, even as it did when the note was first sounded on the piano by Mary. And always, always comes the quiet mood, the feeling, the aura, or whatever you want to call it, associated with it. Now listen carefully, the old sage said, and you will experience a mystery unfolding its answer to you. It has been said that there are no words for the void. It has been said there are no words for the ineffable, which stands behind all appearances, behind all tangibility, behind all form. That there are no words for the ineffable, which is the substance of all form. It has been said that God, the ineffable, being infinite, and words, being finite, make it impossible to speak of God with words. Well, dear friends, let me tell you now the secret of mastership's communication. Oh, Mary, you needn't listen heavily, because you'll understand it. You'll understand. It's so simple, and it's so gentle, and so obvious that you'll wonder why it hasn't always been known. Oh, Hahn paused a moment. He seldom used so many words. The students' faces were aglow with anticipation. No one who has ever seen such a scene between himself and himself, between a teacher and his students, between students and a teacher, would ever doubt how very important the truth has become in their affairs. Indeed, Hahn had told them many times that the truth has a way of remaining concealed until it is more important than anything in all the world. Now, turning to Mary at the piano, he asked her to strike the first note and hold it until it had faded away. She did. Now the second, Hahn requested. She did again. When the sounds had disappeared, he had to repeat the process, ensuring everyone to listen carefully. Now, listen to the sound, he said. When this was finished, he turned to Mary and said, now sound both notes together and hold them down. She did as he requested. Listen carefully, he said. All of you, listen. Tell me what you hear. Mary struck the two notes in unison while the group listened intently. May I stop just a minute? Do you remember, all of you, remember that happy time when you were in school? Second grade, third grade, fourth grade? Oh, it didn't make any difference when. Do you remember when the teacher said, now, since we've all finished early, how would you like to hear some stories? Do you remember? Tell me, do you remember? Do you remember the excitement and the joy and the fun? Well, let me tell you, it's that excitement and the joy and the fun that hears what's behind all that you've heard here and all you're hearing now. All right, now remember, Hahn has just had Mary sound two notes at the piano, and he says, tell me what you hear. Well, who do you suppose was the first one to answer? Well, of course, Soldier, immediately. Oh, he says, I know what I'm hearing. Each sound, he said, reinforces the other, so therefore the volume is louder. Oh, yes. Yes, said Hahn. That's a scientific fact. That's a physical fact. It's true. One sound reinforces the other. The volume is louder. You put one speaker here and another speaker there, you get and feed the same volume into each, but you go out forward and it's twice the volume, or at least more. But Hahn said, no, what else do you hear? What else? And he was about to ask Mary to strike them again. Oh, but she was ready with an answer before he could talk. I hear an overtone, she said excitedly. I hear a third tone that I didn't strike with my fingers at all. nor did you tell about it. The old teacher beamed with approval. Yes. Yes, he said. There you have the secret. While I may not be able to speak of something, I can sound the notes that will allow an overtone to speak of them. Every experience is another note struck on the heartstrings of awareness. The notes of yesterday, yesteryear, and the present moment, especially the present moment, this now moment, combine to sound a chord whose overtones come forth within listening awareness. That overtone, as you see, Mary, comes as one's own. It comes immaculately, untouched by human hand. It is pristine, it's pure, and it's perfect, and it comes with just what the moment demands, allowing us to proceed at the overtone's directions. The old gentleman sat down and waited while they all considered the overtone. May I hear everyone say squistle, please? Sense awareness is mind's responsibility. Immediately the intellect, after of course the heart allows this to be considered, and if it's said well enough and the words are strung harmoniously enough, the intellect will say, well, that makes pretty good sense. Yes, awareness is mind's responsibility, and so it goes along with it, but then pretty soon, it isn't long until the intellect, having been humbled a bit, and the intellect, you see, really is half of awareness. The two work hand in glove. There's really a harmonious balance struck between the heart and the intellect. The intellect, however, is concerned with tangibility, with weighing and measuring the images within awareness. Rightfully, it is concerned with colors and things and distances. It's concerned with what this does and that does, and that's the function of the intellect, and we don't throw it out the window. It's just that the intellect has been so heavily weighted in our affairs that the me who says my intellect rears his head when suddenly it appears that his intellect might be lowered just a little bit and evened with the heart. Heart and intellect are a two that are one. Yin and yang, as it was put in Orientalism. In some philosophies, it's spoken of as the basic gender, the first, the gender male and female, before the Adam man. Before, and God made man, male and female created he them, and behold, they were very good. The first one, before the mist went up. But whatever. There's a happy balance for myself between heart and intellect. And I know that when I first listened to the heart, I wanted to take the intellect and heave it out the window. I said to myself, you know, intellect is what's gotten me in all this trouble. The intellect of me is the dastard. But it wasn't the intellect that was the dastard. It was the me who said, my intellect. That was the woeful, weary one, the liar from the beginning. In any event, the intellect finally, or the me who says my intellect, it is always hanging around. The ego is always present in order that we might understand what egolessness is. Would one ever know what egolessness is had he never been faced with trying to be the ego? This is sort of like saying, would a chicken ever know what light is until somebody pulls the plug on the incubator? And suddenly is not light is present. Darkness makes the light very plain. There's an Oriental saying, if you want to know what water is, some fish said, I want to know what water is. And this wise sage said, well then let someone take you out of the water you're swimming in and put you in the air and you'll know very quickly what water is. But anyway, so the intellect pretty soon feeling that it's threatened will say, awareness, if mind is responsible for awareness, and awareness is mind's functioning, therefore I don't have to be responsible. You are preaching irresponsibility. Someone is advocating being irresponsible. You're saying I have no responsibilities. Well, great. That'll get you in a passel of trouble in a hurry. I know this, that the heart-led experience for myself without the intellect even considered was just as disastrous, if not more so, than was the intellectual experience without any consideration of the heart was. So what then, what about responsibility? What is responsibility in the light of the fact that awareness is the functioning of mind? And therefore mind is being all there is to this awareness for which mind is responsible. Well, for myself, now I'll outline very quickly the answer, and I'll be answering 3 questions or 2 questions. First, I saw that mind and its self-awareness were one mind. Not a duality, not a dualism at all. Just like the television set and its functioning are one television set. If the television set ain't functioning, honey, it ain't no television set at all. Isn't that right? Well, and if there is just functioning on the scene, how can there be a functioning on the scene if there isn't a television set? So the television set and its functioning, there clearly seem to be one television set. Mind and its self-awareness are one mind, for which mind is responsible. But now, here comes my answer to, well then, what is my responsible living about? And let me clear this up, please, for all of the good Christian scientists and religious scientists that over the years have asked me to clarify this. I can't in words, but I can sound a note that will answer precisely. Consider the gong struck. This fall, as Rachel and I were leaving, we watched the squissels out gathering nuts. Now, my next door neighbor has a pecan orchard. And right outside Woodsong's side window is a black walnut tree and 3 extinct chestnut trees loaded with chestnut. And the squissels are out there gathering them like mad. Is that right, chestnut? Is that the right tree? Chestnut, yes. It's supposed to be extinct, but I've got some that are surviving. Now, the little squirrels that are this year's generation are out gathering the nuts. To the best of my knowledge, there is in squirreldom no metaphysical treatise on winter, on cold weather, on the lack of energy, and the need to save nuts. I don't know if a language has been developed or not, but I don't think so. I don't think that the young are schooled in the art of gathering nuts and taking them away and storing for the winter. And by the way, at Woodsong, we have the New York City of chipmunkdom. I mean, we got more chipmunks than we know what to do with. They were talking about sending squirrels from the White House lawn out to the west. Well, if anybody wants chipmunks, I got enough for the whole universe. And they're out busily making their storage bins full for a winter they don't know about, for a winter they have no intellectual knowledge of. But there is an intuitive living. And as I watch the squissels and the chipmunks doing their work, doing their thing, they are filled with joy. They're having fun, they're chasing each other, and they're doing all kinds of acrobatics. And the jaybirds are on the scene, making the chipmunks leave their little grains so they won't get attacked. If you've ever watched them, the jaybirds arrive on the scene while chipmunks are gathering grain, and as the chipmunk runs back to his hole, he has to leave 2 or 3 grains down there for the jay, else he gets pecked. And all of this is going on, and to my knowledge, the chipmunks don't know much about this either, about winter coming on, a season they haven't even lived yet. Now this is intuitive living. I know that as we give up the me who says my life, the me who says my opinion, my beliefs, my family, my this, my that, to just be the awareness that observes family, job, friends, dollars, universe, heaven, to just be that one, comes about, I don't know how to put it, John, you were asking that question about heart, one comes just intuitively to do and find himself doing, strangely, marvelously, like the squirrel that's storing for winter. I bet you there is no one in here who hasn't been driving along at some point in time when all of a sudden it seemed, oh, I'll take a right here, and all of a sudden, why am I doing this, for crying out? Why? Makes no sense. But lo and behold, along the way, you run into somebody, and within an hour, or within a day, or within a few months, you know why you made that turn to the right or to the left. When it didn't make any reasonable sense, any logical sense to do it. And ye shall hear behind thee a voice saying, this is the way, walk ye in it, whether you turn to the right hand or to the left. That's intuitive living. And to whatever extent the me is understood to be the delineation of egolessness or God, to the extent that we let go, identifying as a possessor who has no reality, like a shadow, to take the real identity to be oneselfhood, to that extent we find ourselves living intuitively and knowing what to do, and marveling, and marveling. And Jesus said to those that are seeking, don't stop seeking until you find. And after you've found, you'll be troubled. And after you've been troubled, then you will be amazed, and you will reign over the all. Did you know that those words are attributed to the one called Jesus? Not in the Bible, but in the Gospel according to Thomas, which is good, beautiful, bright, clear and precise, straight line metaphysics that doesn't waver, written in the 1st century. And the copy that was found is a first scribe's copy, and anybody who wants to get it can find it published by Harper Brothers. It's a grand book to have. The Gospel according to Thomas. And the edition to get is the Brill edition, because it had 4 translators involved. One a Catholic, one a Protestant, one an Hasidic Jew, and the other a Greek Orthodox, I believe, so that nobody would twist or bend it at all, the translation of it, so that they all agreed. It's either the Brill edition or the Till edition. I think it's the Brill edition, B-R-I-L-L, published by Harper Brothers. Anyway, to make that point and punch it home just a little bit more, let me strike one more note. This spring, and all of you have watched this spring, I watched the birds about their business of building nests. Now, John and Juanita have been to Woodsong. They know how many birds are around there. There may be others here who've been there too. In any event, there are a lot of birds. And this spring I watched them. Most of them are cardinals, by the way. And when I left, the cardinals were having a vote to see who they were going to elect as pope. I'm sorry. In any event, we watched the cardinals and the dove and sparrows and birds of all feathers building their nests. Now, again, as far as I know, these were birdlings, 1-year-old, that had never gone through the process of egg laying. There was no metaphysical tome of erudition about nest building, and yet the sparrows built a nest of their sort, the swallows built a nest of their sort, the hummingbirds a nest of their sort, And the catbirds laid their eggs in other nests, so they didn't have to build one. But here is intuitive living in the process, going about the business of happily building a nest about something that they're not consciously, intellectually aware of as a necessity or a need. Well, if God can so take care of sparrows, what need then have we to worry about intuitive living? As long as we allow this awareness to be God's self-awareness, and of course there is nothing we can do to prevent it. It is, whether we like it or not, whether we do anything or try to do anything about it or not. Then we will see our comings and goings being very satisfying. We have approximately 5 minutes, 3 minutes. I would sound a bell right here, but a green vine grows near the place I write. This is just taken from my notebook because I write every day. A green vine grows near the place I write. The same vine renewed again and again over the years of my warfare with words. Its leaves look long at me and laugh at me, knowing, as I do, there are more secrets in an inch of that living, laughing, vigorous vine than ever all the words of the world could disclose. Tennyson tells it well. Now I'll quote someone else, but listen. Flower in the crannied wall, I pluck you out of the crannies. I hold you here, root and all, in my hand. Little flower, if I could understand what you are, root and all in all, I should know what God is and what man is. Rachel, you turn the tape over. That means we've got 30 more minutes, right? Black man stretched forth his hand and touched the face of a growing, living flower. In that sweet simplicity of humility that was his way, he said, and now I'm quoting him directly, when I touch that flower, I am touching infinity. It existed long before there were human beings on this earth and will continue to exist for millions of years to come. Through the flower, I talk to the infinite, which is only a silent force. This is not a physical contact. It is not in the earthquake, wind, or fire. It is in the invisible world. It is that still small voice that calls up the fairy. That man was a great man. His name was George Washington Carver. He named his laboratory God's Little Garden. And in that place where so many wonders were performed, George Washington Carver never allowed a book to enter into it. I was a soldier and was fearful many times. I've never seen a soldier who was afraid to admit he was afraid. Oh, I rationalized my fear. Oh, I mean, I was a soldier in combat in more than one war. I was an infantry soldier in World War II. I was an infantry soldier during the Korean War. This did all sorts of repugnant and repulsive things, and was afraid many times. Then somewhere along the way, one way or another, a verse that I had seen 1,000 times before, perhaps 10,000 times, I looked at it just one more time, and it said, perfect love casts out fear. And when I read it that time, the overtone that came with it, which was fear plus a situation plus a lot of years of struggling and trying to know the answer, all the harmonious chord that was struck. But this time I said to myself, yes, fear represents a distrust that God is all, that God is everything, including this scene. Do I distrust? I asked myself. Or do I believe that there is such a thing as God? It was as simple as that. And when I realized that there was no doubt in this one, called Bill's experience, no doubt, but that there was an ineffable that being this awareness. Since there is an ineffable being everything else, whether it be an ant, a grain of sand, or a note, or a numeral. Since there is an ineffable being everything, then I must certainly assume there is an ineffable that being this awareness that is I. Do I doubt it? If I doubt it, I'm fearful. If I don't, it's the love that casts out fear, and that was the end of my fear. Harper's. Oh, nuts. Harper's. I'm not, while I include all musicians within myself, this is no musician. All right, Harper's published a pamphlet containing the following words. And these words sort of catch the breath and they catch the eye at the same time. And I'd like to read the statement that was published in a little booklet by Harper's. Now, this magazine. We are looking for the seminal idea, the objective judgment on the trend of things, the air-clearing burst of indignation, which will suddenly throw everything about us into new perspective, and which is, as likely as not, to come from some individual who sits all by himself, unorganized, unrecognized, unorthodox, and unterrified. Well, there are those of us who know that the seminal idea has come. It is here, right now. There is a presence here in this room, being this room, and all else. The seminal idea is what we're trying to articulate. It is that idea which simply says, God is all. It is that idea which says, this awareness, right here, right now, is God's functioning going on. It is an idea so revolutionary in its newness that it takes the human selfhood, the identity as a human being, and throws it out the window. But understanding all the while what humanism is, and understands what purpose humanism serves. The seminal idea points out that tangibility is the delineation of God, or that matter is spirit identified. That materialism is the many notes that sound the symphony that harmony is, that God is, that isness is. So the seminal idea has come. And by the seminal idea, I guess, is meant the final idea, by means of which the ultimate answer is found and heard. The idea that will allow mankind to take hold of its heritage from the beginning. The final idea, the messianic message is what it is, that permits the perfection to be seen on earth as it is in heaven. Tangibility is the delineation of heaven, and heaven and its delineation are one heaven, just exactly as symphony and its notes are one symphony, exactly as tree and its shadow are one tree, and the power and authority resides with tree. Power and authority resides as light and not as its colors that are its clear depict of itself in tangibility. So there is no wait for the overtones. We don't have to live 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, or 1,000 years in order that the overtones be heard. They can be heard immediately. And incidentally, all that would construe a wait being necessary before one understands, all that construes such an idea as a wait being necessary is that which says that eternity and infinity are not me, this moment. In other words, it is the old nature of us that would say such a thing. The me that says my awareness, my ideas, my opinion. I'd like to tell a story. Another note. Once upon a time, there was an old prospector who had spent his whole life looking for gold and silver. And he had crossed the deserts of the world back and forth many times. And of course, had come to understand the value of water. This prospector wanted very much to leave something to the world. As he got older, he said, now listen, I don't want to leave this place the way I found it. It's got to be a little bit better. I haven't even taken time to have a family. I have no children that I know of, and I want to leave this world changed. I would like to give something to all mankind and bless it. But what can I give, he said. What can I do? I don't have all that much time as far as a leaf quaking on the tree. And by the way, we quit identifying as leaves quaking on the tree to identify as tree. And all the leaves that are on it, in it, being it, are one selfhood. In any event, he, in his carelessness and in his wondering what he could leave the world, one day ran out of water. And lo and behold, he knew that he was too far away to make it. And he said, oh, whoa, I'm going to perish out here on the desert. And then as the delirium set in, and his thirst and anguish, he ventured over towards off the trail, and he went the wrong way. And he went over where he saw some shade from a peak of a mountain, and he sat down and he rested in the shade there. Thought, well, maybe I can make another day. Maybe, but that's all, another day. And while he was sitting there, he heard a noise, and lo and behold, it was running water. Water bubbling right up out of the base of this mountain. He had found himself a fountain of cool, clear water. And of course, he drank and drank, and he was filled with joy. And he knew that there was no map anywhere that told of this well. And he said, well, maybe I better check it out and see how much water is involved. So he took his pick, and he picked away, and a big chunk of ground caved in, and lo and behold, it was a huge underground stream, a veritable river, right there in the desert. And in his great joy, he said, now I have a heritage to give all mankind. I'll tell them about this well of water out here where they need it. And in his grand joy, he began to build a little fountain there, a little temple around the fountain of water. It was sort of like an artesian thing that spewed up like that. So he started piling rocks, but not just ordinary rocks. He went out and got the best, the most beautiful. And he began to build a thing so people could lean over and the water would come right to them, and they could fill their buckets easily. And he knew then that he had something to give the world, and he no sooner thought that than here come a group of people lost in the desert, out of water, almost perishing. And he said, here, I have something for you. And they came and they drank and they filled their buckets and they watered their stock and they went off singing his praises and marking the place on their map, and then they told everybody they could find about it. And the old prospector stayed there and he built himself quite a temple around this thing. It came out like a miniature Gothic cathedral with spires and everything, and he had the most beautiful stones he could find. And he began to call it his cathedral, his fountain cathedral. And as this other group went on and told others, why, they began to make this a stopping point. And the people that were moving one way, the long way that needed water, they stopped and were happy to have it. And they filled their canteens and they filled their jugs and they drank heartily and praised him and thanked him and gave him some remuneration for his service. The people coming the other way who had full jugs and didn't need it, they stopped anyway out of curiosity. And he used to marvel as he'd watch them in the evening holding up two little vials against the setting sun, and he knew what they were doing. They were comparing his water with the water they'd brought along. And these people, of course, needing no water, took little and gave him nothing. The old man stayed there till the end of his days. But an interesting thing happened just before the end of his days. One evening, late in the evening, a beautiful wagon pulled up with a very sophisticated lady in the wagon. She had teamsters and servants. She was waited on right there in the desert as though she were in her mansion in San Francisco or in Cape Cod. And as she was having dinner that evening, she sent word to the old prospector to please come, and he came. And she announced and said, I want you to know that I am perhaps the world's greatest authority on fountains. I've gone all over the world looking at fountains, and you are honored to have someone here who knows as much about fountains as I do. Now in the morning, just as soon as I've had breakfast, she said, I want to go and inspect your fountain, and I want you to come along because it will be a grand service to me to be able to ask you questions about it and you can answer immediately. And he said, of course, yes, indeed I will. And sure enough, the next morning, at the break of dawn, she was up. Her servants were fixing her breakfast. She dressed so she could walk out to the fountain and look at it, and she went with him, and the prospector went along. And she stood there gazing at his cathedral fountain. And she backed off just a little bit, and she said, the rocks are crooked, especially those along the bottom. Your design also, may I ask you why you have intermingled large stones with small stones? And here you have flashing colors. Over here you have gathered jade, that's nice enough, but you have it right next to volcanic lava, of all things. How gross. Well, about this time, a party of people who needed water, but not really aware how badly they needed it. There was simply not enough water to make it the rest of the trip. And they listened to the ladies haranguing the shape of the fountain, the size of the fountain, the color of the fountain. And those who listened to that were never aware at all of the cool, clear water that issued forth. So it is that it is the idea that's important, not the messenger. It is the message, not the messenger. It has been said that those who knew Shakespeare, who had many beautiful messages, those who looked at the cathedral, the body, the form, the shape, and listened to the personality of the man, it's been said many times, wouldn't even go to his plays. It's been said of those who know Beethoven, whose message is sublime, those who listen and enjoy music. No, a man who couldn't even hear, who was deaf. When he walked down the street, the dogs barked at him. And the children ran over to the other side of the street and threw stones at him. And many landlords evicted him because they just didn't like him, the man, the messenger. So it's a message. It's the message. It's the message. The message here today is awareness, is the identity that one is. This awareness, it listens, is God's awareness. It's the only awareness in town. We've never been outside it. We've never been anything other than it. We began with awareness. We talked about awareness. And we'll stay there eternally. And what an identity to be. To be the beholder, the witnessing of infinity, harmony, beauty, tenderness, gentleness, sincerity. What an identity to be, is who and what we be. Guiltless. Guiltless. What is guilt, by the way? The means by which guiltlessness is made plainly apparent. Would anyone know what guiltlessness is? Had he not tried to live the being guilty of being black, or being yellow, or being white, or being poor, or sick, or old, or young? Do you realize that intellectually there is never any way to know what to do about anything, really? And literally this is true. We either eat too much or not enough. We either exercise too much or not enough. I'm talking about intellectually now. We drink too much or not enough. There is no way intellectually to know what to do. But the heart tells us in no uncertain terms. There is something right now that responds and reverberates inside that says, yes, this awareness is immaculate, pure. It is the Christ identity, the Christ which said, I shall never leave you nor forsake you. It is the Christ life, here, now. We take it to be the identity we be and accept the heritage that's been ours from the beginning, the birthright that's been ours from the beginning. It, as it's put in the Bible, is the Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. Where does the kingdom appear? Within this awareness that's aware, right here, right now. Where? Always within this awareness. How? Is there any effort required? Do we have to do anything to be awareness? Now suppose one would say, yes, but my friend is blind. You'll notice that it's compensated for. Where it would appear that one is weak in one area, it would appear he's strong in another. The one who doesn't see so well hears very well, or the one who doesn't hear so well sees very well, or feels or smells or something very well. So, it's been my pleasure to tell you of your uprightness. And I would like to conclude with this statement. And this is addressed to the awareness that is myself, who with all of its heart and soul and might and main understands that awareness is God-like and that God is all, right here, right now. The only and all and only on the same. You are invited with all my heart to visit Rachel and me, to visit yesterday and today and tomorrow, all times past and all times yet to come. But who needs an invitation? Earth doesn't ask for the leaves of the trees. They just come together and they touch in their season. They meet face to face. They touch for a time. And then, in a time, intangibility's time, they are one earth. Perhaps it was the heaviness of a fall rain that brings them together, or a whip of the wild winter wind. But whatever the cause, they join again. Two become one in ways so soft and natural that even the squirrel doesn't take notice, nor the jaybirds complain. This concludes our seminar, and I want to thank all of you, sweet and gentle people, for being here and giving me a chance to sing my song. See if it isn't your song too. Put it to the test. And I'll hang around and answer questions if you like, one-to-one or however. But thank you all very much for your kind attention, and have a happy afternoon watching Alabama beat the tar out of USC.